Alright, well, I'm Brother Bob. I have my tablet here, and we're back out here doing another one. It is relatively hot, so I think that might keep some people away. I like to say, if you've seen any of my videos, I try to be a little more private. Don't put people in the videos, just basically because, I don't want to take videos of people and have it put all out there on YouTube and everywhere else. And it's not something that they asked for. It's just that they were in the background. So I'd rather just not have them in the background. If you want to be on the internet, it's by your choice and your postings. Anyway, so it seems nobody really watches these videos. I've looked at the tags. I've kind of done some Google searches, and I don't know. I've had some discussions whether or not it's because of the fact that maybe YouTube is more of the liberal, maybe it's the type of audience, it's things people are seeking, the shorts, the funny stuff, things like that. But there's a lot of people out there that are depressed and upset many days, and I think these videos kind of just are something to sit and listen to. Hear that you're not alone in this world, and I tell stories, and it's about the high school once said that there should be a well, they said it about high school. There should be a class on everyday living, how to write checks. It's something we don't do hardly, but every once in a while you write a check. But how to balance the bank accounts and keep track of that with your bills and your credit card statements. Even though you use a credit card, you can still ledger, track your spending habits and things you've done on paper. You can kind of get an idea of what you waste money doing, or what you could do different. And sometimes, you can't really do a whole lot different, but at least kind of where the money's going. Maybe you do find something you do different, but at least you have something to look at. Well, so anyway, I have the idea for another video. Come across different ideas. We continue with the idea of as I get older, more people have passed away. Now, the thing is that, you've seen the video, but if not, I do identify as Baptist, but I also read the Bible, and I Google out scripture on my tablet from King James Version. I think there's been a discussion on that in one of my videos. Not, it's just a good go-to version. So, anyway, so I do look up stuff other than the Bible. But anyway, with that, I go through many scriptures and things like that about things I feel like that are related to different things, people passing on. The Bible speaks of passing on as you pass from, you don't die, although it says it's appointed for man once to die. You die of the physical. As I said, the flesh and blood does not enter the kingdom of heaven, but you do not die to darkness, although some religions do believe that, to the new awakening in the new earth and things like that. So even if you are of that belief or heard that belief, even at that, I mean, it still says that there's a future if you do the things of God. The odds of dying are not really there. It's the idea of where you're going to go. And then I guess some people claim that you will just find darkness and not wake up. I don't think that's quite what I believe at all. They say the people who are good people, good Christians, of some religions, will sleep until the earth is rebuilt. I don't know that I believe that. I believe more so that we are going to go somewhere. That we're not going to be asleep, and those who are called, everybody will pass on, and everybody will be conscious of this. That is what the beliefs are of me. So that being said, we have to look at the fact that we will probably see those loved ones again in heaven. But what I want to discuss, though, is an interesting topic that come to mind when we do think of people who have passed on. And I'm kicking out little pine needles from the table here. I picked this spot because it is the park, but I also picked this spot because it is a table. and this is kind of what my idea is. Let's consider this the big table, and let's remember this, the Last Supper. Now, I'm sure we've all heard that, especially if we've read any of the Bible or heard any stories or taken, as they say, communion. But the Lord's Supper, also called that, you may be familiar with that at some point throughout the church or anything. So anyway, I have my tablet here, and we're going to look up. I'm going to try to find a statement here about the Lord's Supper and what it says of the actual scripture, and we'll get into this, and then I'll tell you kind of more what this is about. Oh, I don't want to do that. I want to go to the Lord's Supper. King James Version, KJV, the Lord's Prayer. It's interesting that come up first. They do say that the searches are the most common searches in order. So it's interesting. The Lord's Prayer comes up first, and actually, as I put in the Lord's, the Supper come up as the second spot. So I guess that's interesting. It's a pretty big deal. Let's see. Bible verse about Lord's Supper. The institution of the Lord's Supper. This is Matthew 26:26-32. ESV, but it's also King James Version. See if we can. This is Bible Gateway I've used before. I remember, I think this is the one that had a little trouble on my other tablet, but that's long gone. We've upgraded to this tablet I've had for 6 months now, I guess. This is the 10-inch, and I think it's not the official Android, whatever it is, 9 or whatever. I think it's at other level, but it's an Android tablet, and I did a review on it. There's one of my videos on it, but, here it is. I can't exactly remember which tablet it is. It's a 10-inch tablet. It's pretty decent, and it certainly brings up my scriptures like I wanted to, and that's one of the reasons I got it, because I was having so much trouble. So anyway, we're down here at that, and as it says, Matthew 26:26-32, institution of the Lord's Supper. Now they were eating. Jesus took bread, and after blessing it, broke it and gave it to the disciples and said, "Take, eat. This is my body." Verse 27. And he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink of it, all of you. Drink of it, all of you." Verse 28. For this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out many for forgiveness of sins. Verse 29, I tell you, I will not drink again of this fruit of the vine until the day when I drink it with new with you in my Father's kingdom. So that's very, very interesting. And the reason I think of this is I continue to think of people who passed on. And it's interesting enough when you think of people who really, a loved one that's passed on, or somebody really important to you, which would also be considered a loved one, in your heart, you consider that the person who's passed on, you think of a time when they were healthy, when they weren't sick, when they were still alive. And we can refer to that as the Last Supper. Many times our supper is a special occasion. It is considered here kind of in the country where I am more familiar with. Here, the supper is generally our final meal. We have called breakfast, and then we call it lunch, and many times calls it dinner. And then, but a lot of times I call it lunch because I say I had a short lunch or something. But growing up, a lot of times it'd be referred to as dinner around 6 o'clock in the evening. But I think technically you did have dinner in the evening around 6 o'clock, and the true supper did come around, later in the evening, 11, 12 o'clock at night, actually. But generally, supper is going to be in the evening, regardless of whatever time you call it. And it's going to be after everything is pretty much stopped. It's a gathering of friends, family. It's an evening meal where the darkness has come, the light is gone. People working in the day, the light, but as things progress throughout the day and the sunlight goes away, it becomes night. It's time for the supper, the final meal, the gathering, the fellowship, and then you're going to have closure. You're going to go to bed and go to sleep. Well, this story of Jesus in the final supper, he's pretty much done with his situation. He's about to be carried away, and that's a whole other story, continuation of this, where he's found guilty and they crucify him before it's all over with. But one of the things, let's see where we're at. 10 minutes. Okay, so I think we're probably going to go about 15 minutes. I think I've said this before on some of my videos and end up another 30 minutes, but I'm going to try to kind of get to the point of this one. Let's remember this concept of the Lord's Supper. It's something to think about. There's always going to be the Last Supper, and we have to prepare ourselves for that. As I say, loved ones pass away, and we think back of when was that Last Supper? When was that Last Supper we had? We lose people all the time. Jesus said he was going away. And he was young, but he knew what his future held. We're going to have people that are young. It could be children at any age. Our time on earth is gone. So why is it interesting to mention and bring this up? Well, it's just to bring up an idea, concept that you never know what the future holds, but it is important to have that Last Supper, to have that supper, to have that fellowship. But we're just going to be in remembrance of that Last Supper, just like Jesus was with his people. We are going to be in remembrance. So you're going to be around one day and you're going to be like, well, I remember, that night we had this dinner. There again, call it dinner, but later on, that last evening meal, and with that person, my father, my mother, my children, my cousin, my aunt, my relative, my best friend. We had lunch, lunch. And maybe, that could be your Last Supper, even though it's lunchtime, but it's your last meal together before they pass away. So I guess, the important thing is to remember, Jesus is saying, the fellowship of his kingdom. So that means that one day we're going to get an opportunity to be there. One day, of course, I'm going to tell you got to follow Jesus and you got to, have the plans to go in his kingdom. But it says that, you will find him for another supper. But in the meantime, you're going to be a little depressed. You're going to think back on that Last Supper you had. You're going to remember a happy time, which is great. But it's just something to think about today. Do you remember your Last Supper with that loved one? I'm sure you do. But it's just a natural way of life. And as I spoke earlier about depression and things like that, it's understandable. I mean, you're going to remember that moment when everything was good. That moment when everything was fine, they were healthy, you had a good time. But that's how life is, and you got to remember that. But as long as we say that to other people who are very depressed, you're still here for a reason. You're making your story, writing your story more so than making it, but it's creating a story. You're writing it in your head. So one day you help other people. As a human race and human people, we are charged to live here. We're also normally charged with the concept of doing the best we can to live long for the future children, the future days. It's just the way of life. So you got to remember the greatness of the Last Supper, but you got to remember, you are to move forward with that, because everyone's had their Last Supper. Your parents, their parents before them, they had their Last Supper with them, and then they had to move forward from the pain and the suffering of losing that person. Life is lived forward. God has other plans for you. I say that in all these things. Sometimes your environment's so horrible. you've got to just get up, get out of that environment, do something different. This life is for you. Uh, you know, let God help you, but also God, most of the time, if not all the time, I really tell people, it's like, God has already told you what to do. You keep saying, well, I don't know what to do. Well, and I ask God and he doesn't say anything. Yeah, he probably did and you just don't want to do it. It's like, Lord, I can't hear you. I don't hear you. I know you didn't tell me to pack up my things and drive across the country or take that mission trip over there to the foreign country. Um, you get your own ideas of, what you want to do. But anyway, so I don't know. It's just an interesting thought to think back on that Last Supper, uh, and think, it is true. But there's going to be a time when things were better. But you've got to move forward for the new future, for the times to be better. You've got to accept that was the Last Supper. Those days are gone. Uh, Keep a special place in your heart for it, but you've got to move forward, because one day you'll be someone else's Last Supper, but you will be that person's hero, that person's uh, mentor, that person that they really cared about, that really helped them in life. You'll be that special person. You'll be that person they speak of in that Last Supper, just as Jesus was. So don't be depressed. Get out there and do stuff. Uh, you'll be happier if you did. I can talk like any other motivational speaker, but I can tell you, if you're listening to these videos, that's what I mostly do, a lot of motivational speaking, because I'm talking to those people out there, because I see a lot of people that are just lost and depressed, and when there's a lot of world out there to get to, and you're missing out on it if you're sitting around just overly depressed. So get out there and live your life.